There's definitely been an increase in Americans wanting to move to France. You know, maybe in Europe we have a better quality of life, we have a better social safety net. You're not just on vacation during your time in France. You need to shift your mindset from like, I'm an American in France to like, I'm a person who lives in France who happens to be American. But I think it's really important to have something that you're going towards or that you're going to be creating, whether it's this quality of life, whether it's, you know, a particular region that you want to discover. You want to start as though you're going to stay forever, but you can always change your mind and go back home.
Today, I'm joined by Allison Lounes, an American from Boston who moved to France many years ago and who has since helped hundreds of expats, retirees, and families successfully build a new life here through her company, Your France Formation. And because we are currently seeing such a strong wave of Americans, Canadians, people dreaming about France, I wanted to have a deeper conversation about what people are really searching for when they decide to leave everything behind and start over abroad. The dream, the reality, the culture shock, and what life in France actually changes once you are here. Allison, welcome to the podcast. Bonjour.
Bonjour, thank you so much for having me.
Merci beaucoup. Comment ça va aujourd'hui, Allison?
Oh, ça va bien, mais il fait froid.
Ah, il fait froid. Ooh, where are you calling us from exactly?
I'm in Paris in my office, and it is very cold compared to what the temperature should be in May. So yeah, I'm hoping we get some real springtime soon. I think it's coming back at the end of the week.
Ah yes, I remember. I saw one of your posts when there is a little bit of a joke with this French proverb, en mai fais ce qu'il te plaît. Like in May, do whatever you want, and because it's been such a harsh month weather-wise, so it was a bit comical, the post that you shared of this person struggling at the beach for holidays. So yeah.
It rained pretty much all weekend. We did not go anywhere.
It's the same. I think it's a bit the same everywhere. Maybe not in the southeast where they are lucky with blue sky all year round, but yeah, unfortunately, it's been a bit hard, but maybe that means the summer is going to be good, hopefully. You live, the office of your company is in Paris, but you live near Paris yourself. You are not in Paris itself?
Yes, I live in a suburb on the eastern side of Paris. So I'm in the 93, which is a very immigrant populated area. Mostly not Americans in that area. The Americans tend to be over in the 7th and the 16th in the west of Paris, in Saint-Germain-en-Laye, Les Yvelines, that kind of area. Not too many Americans on the east or in the 93, but it's a really nice little suburb, and 20 minutes to get into Paris, and it's a little bit less expensive, and we've been there for almost 9 years now.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about the origin of Allison in France. How did everything begin? I know for you it was a long time ago. Has your French, like when you spoke French, people have noticed that you have this perfect accent and you're very fluent. So tell us a little bit before your France formation. I'm not sure if I pronounced correctly, by the way, so feel free to correct me. Like, what brought you here? Tell us a little bit your story.
Sure. So I actually moved because I wanted to study abroad in France. And that's because when I was about 7 years old, my aunt did her postdoc in Paris. And so she came to Paris for a year, was living here. She lived over in Bercy, which is, now there's like this great shopping area and there's a train station. And at the time, apparently there was like nothing. It was just a big construction area. I did not get to come visit her at the time, although my parents came, my grandparents came to visit her. But she did bring me back like little gifts from Paris, and I had an Eiffel Tower t-shirt, and she taught me some words of French, and I just thought it was so beautiful. And then my favorite thing that she brought back that she had in her apartment in Boston was she had a little packet of the violets from Toulouse, candied violets from Toulouse. And they're little like violet petals that are crystallized in sugar, and they're like these little purple violet flavored candies, and they are so good. And she had a little package on her bookshelf in her apartment in Boston, and my sister and I would go and like sleep over at her apartment, and I would get to have like one of these violet candies. And I just thought to myself, like, oh my God, French people eat flowers as candy. That is the fanciest thing I can possibly imagine. I have to go to this place where flowers are candy. And so that was one of the many things that contributed to me wanting to learn French. I started learning French in the seventh grade in middle school and just really
Wow.
loved it and like picked it up very quickly, continued all through high school and college. And I just really wanted to make it to Paris. And so I came to study abroad for a full year. And then I spent my whole senior year of college. I had to go back to finish my degree and my degree requirements. And I spent the whole year like, how do I get back to Paris?
Wow, that was a true love story. I love the story of les bonbons à la violette. That's how we call them. It's a little bit old school. I remember eating them as a kid, but I haven't seen them in my adult life. I don't remember seeing them now. I think maybe it's a habit that gets a little bit lost to
I found
consume.
them. I when I've been to Toulouse, I found them in Toulouse.
Mm.
And I found them there's a store in Nice where
Oh,
they had a little box of violet petals, rose petals, and verveine, like green tea.
yes.
So I was able to find them, but it's not something like even if you go to like a gourmet, if you go to like Galerie Lafayette, there's the gourmet food section where they have all kinds of like little specialties and gifts that you can bring back and all kinds of different French cookies and candies that you can bring as gifts. You won't find them there. Like I think you really have to go to like some of these very specialized candy shops, either in Toulouse or like really fancy ones in cities like Nice.
Épicerie fine, we call those places that sells really good product, une épicerie fine. I think people would like entering in those little shop with like a fine selections of items, and there are plenty of places like that in France. And when you told this story, it just reminded me of, first of all, the clothes that you are wearing now, and the whole images of your website is all around the color purple, the lavender. There is like this kind of aesthetic. So I kind of directly connected it with your little story, I guess, for you. Like you kind of wanted to share a little bit what instilled the dream, no, for you. Like what was the pull for you towards France, no?
In a certain sense, sure. And I mean, we all see and love the photos of like the lavender fields in Provence and the wineries and all the different colors of, the sunflowers in Burgundy. And, we see these beautiful images of gardens and all of that.
Mhm.
For me, it was always like Paris and not necessarily those other areas of France. I've always been in Paris or the Paris area. Purple's my favorite color, so that
Mhm.
definitely had something to do with the branding. But yeah, I mean, I love obviously like the Toulouse violets, the lavender fields are amazing.
Mm.
Definitely a place I really love to visit.
When you first came to France, there was a part of you who had this idea to settle down forever in France, or that just came with like your story and maybe meeting your husband, or
Well, I always wanted to keep the option open to stay. Even at the end of my junior year abroad in Paris, I regretted that I couldn't just stay and like not go back to New York to finish my degree. But I knew I had to go back to I had like 3 core classes left I had to finish. I had to finish my university degree. And plus it gave me time to plan how was I going to come back to France? What was I going to do? How was I going to stay? How was I going to finance like living in France? I applied for a lot of different things. I applied for a Fulbright. My advisors at my university loved my project, but what I didn't realize and what they didn't tell me is that in order to get a Fulbright, you typically have to not have already studied in the country that you're applying
okay.
for the
Mm.
scholarship for. So I was devastated when I didn't get it because everybody had told me my project was really good. It was never really a viable possibility. So what I ended up doing, my project was studying folktales. My master's degree ended up being on folktales and oral tradition in French-speaking Algeria, or they were translated into French from
Wow.
Kabyle or Algerian Arabic.
Because Lounes, your name, you just mentioned to me that you've got some Algerian origins.
Not me, my husband.
It's from
So
your husband.
that's
Okay.
kind of a
Okay.
coincidence.
I see. Well, yeah, like synchronicity, maybe. Like, mm.
Yeah, yeah. So I ended up like when I came back, I contacted a professor that I had taken a class with when I was an undergraduate in my study abroad program. And she accepted me for a master's, and I was able to do my master's program, my Master 2, under her direction, and she was my thesis advisor. So at the time, the process for applying to these French programs was quite different. you applied directly through a professor and it was much later in the year and you got notified of your acceptance in like June. You know, I was pretty confident I would be accepted because she had personally accepted me and I had already been her student. So I ended up returning and enrolling directly in this Master 2, where I studied Algerian women's folktales and their transmission. And I wrote my thesis on 2 books of translated folktales by a folklorist named Nora Aswal. And they're really fun and interesting. They're all about
Wow.
like women maturing in adolescence and getting married and all of those things in rural
Yeah.
Algeria. They're very modern and also very traditional, and obviously have been passed down for many generations. And they're really funny. So one was Les Contes Libertins du Maghreb was the main book. There was another one with some other stories that I worked on as well. And so
Continue, a quick invitation. If you are dreaming of France or already building a life here, join over 1,500 readers who receive my free Feel Good French Friday, a newsletter every week. It's packed with practical tips, French expressions, cultural insights, and real stories from expats navigating their life in France. And if you'd like more support, my signature program, Survive and Thrive in France, will be opening a new cohort soon. It's an 8-week experience that combines French, cultural confidence, life coaching with me, and a community of like-minded learners who want to feel truly at home in France. The current cohort is underway and the waiting list for the next one is already growing. If you'd like to be the first to know when registrations opens, just click the link below and add your name and email. There is no commitment and you'll get priority access when doors open. If you'd like to see more interviews and stories like this, the best way to support the show, to support the channel, is simply to like the video and subscribe if you haven't already. It really helps us reach more people dreaming of a new life in France. Now, back to the video. Merci beaucoup. You help as well, if it's, as you mentioned, a culture that is passed on orally, maybe it's getting a little bit lost, and what you do to write them down, it's maybe also helping not to forget them if they are getting lost.
Yeah, so this woman goes around, and she still does this, almost 20 years later. She goes around and meets with elderly women in Algeria, in all these little villages, and collects the stories with, has them tell her the stories. A lot of them don't read and write necessarily. She writes them down in Kabyle or in Algerian dialect, and then she translates them into French and publishes them in France. And she also, storytelling is normally meant to be done as a performance. It's like, you sit around the sit around the fire in the evening, like sharing stories before the kids go to bed, or even after the kids go to bed. And so she also does performances. And that's actually how I initially met her, is one of my professors invited me to go see a performance of this woman performing other stories she had collected.
Une narratrice, no? We can call her like a narrator. Une conteuse. Ah oui.
Yeah. Yeah, she calls herself a conteuse, and sometimes she has a musician that accompanies her, sometimes with, I'm forgetting the name of the instrument now, but it's like a traditional Algerian, like, an oud, I believe is the name of the instrument, the traditional Algerian instrument.
Potentially,
kind of like a cross between a banjo and a
beautiful sound. I think I can hear the music. Wow, that's a really beautiful story of what an interesting field to explore.
Yeah, so it was really fun and interesting, and I got to go to Algeria with her for a couple of weeks to collect some stories and go to a festival. Now, I don't speak any Kabyle, or I know one word of Kabyle,
which is
Tamshish, which I believe is cat.
Ah, okay, well, random, but Did you speak French with this lady? Yeah, so she doesn't speak too much English, like your language was French.
No, I don't think she
Yeah,
spoke very much English
yeah,
at all. So no, we
yeah.
were.
So that was a good practice for you to do all of that in
Yes.
French. Mm,
Yeah. And I
mm.
mean, I wrote my thesis in French, and all my classes were in French. So
Wow, I like your story. I had no idea. And do you think that you mentioned when you had to go back, when you wanted, to after this lovely experience in France, when you wanted to go back and you had this first disappointment, do you think it's because of your challenges that you faced early on, like as a very young person, I imagine, that instilled the desire to work helping American expats moving abroad? Because I think before moving to France, you also help people moving to other countries, no?
no, I've only ever done France, and it was
Okay.
it was started when I was a student. Basically, the first year that I was a student, I was study abroad program. Like I paid my regular U.S. university tuition of $50,000 or whatever it was at the time, and I took classes in the French university alongside all the French kids. But I was in this program where like they were translating my grades. I got credit for them at home. They found the housing. They did all of these things for me, administrative wise, to allow me to have this junior year abroad experience in France. And when I wanted to come back, I did look into doing an American master's program, either, in New York, or there were, at the time, I think, more options for doing a master's program directly in France. But it was paying US tuition. It was either spending $45,000, $50,000 on another year of tuition with no financial aid, or I could enroll in a French university that ended up costing 452 euros for 1 year of tuition and 1 year of student health insurance.
That seems crazy for Americans, no?
Yeah.
When I said that
So
to, yeah, it seems really crazy. And I think French people don't even realize how lucky we are to have this system, and because it's almost free. Like it's not free, but almost when you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, and it is going to go up next year. Apparently, they are going to increase tuition on non-EU students, and it's going to be about 3,500 instead of 300 and 450. But still, like, so I started writing. When I came back as an independent student, I had some contacts from my program. So like, I was able, for example, to get housing because I contacted, somebody actually from the Middlebury College French language school. Like I had a contact there, and I said, look, I'm moving. I don't have a place to stay yet. If you have a leftover apartment after you house your students, like, can you consider like letting me use it? And then of course, like, you'll get it back for your students next year, and you won't like lose that for the program. So that worked out really well, and I was able to find an apartment that way for the first year. But nobody was doing any of these administrative things. Like there was no help for my visa. There was no like, I was on the French healthcare system now. Not on the US healthcare. I had to sort of manage any problems on my own. So I learned how to do it, and I started writing a blog about how to do all of these things. And at the time, like, there were no Facebook groups, there were no forums. Like the French universities, the French administrations did not have any relevant or correct information online in 2009, 2010. And so my blog became a really important resource for a lot of people.
What's the name of this blog? Do you still have it?
I do not still have it. Unfortunately, somebody bought the domain out from under me at some point. It was called Paris Unraveled, and I still meet people to this day who were like, oh, I remember reading your blog back in 2014 or 15, and it helped me get my visa or move to France or do XYZ. Yeah, I mean, I started writing, I started helping people. I briefly had a job in taxes and learned a lot about, how the tax treaty worked, how taxes and visa is interplayed. So I did have some actual training on all of the admin stuff related to how people get set up in France and what social charges, what are the requirements for different visas, that kind of stuff.
It's quite complex, huh? Considering that you are in a federal state, everything changes according to where you are from, and you seem to be quite resourceful. Like you seem to be quite inquisitive. You enjoy, making researches and.
Yeah, and I mean, you just kind of have to like go in with the attitude of like, I'm going to figure out how to do it. I mean, there's a lot more information out there now than there was,
Mm-hmm.
15, 20 years ago. But that also comes with a giant grain of salt because now there's 20 years of accumulated information, but not all of it is right. Or it might have been right 12 years ago, but it hasn't been right, you know,
With the new
for the past.
laws, or yeah, things
Yeah,
are
like
changing.
there was a decree published over the weekend, so things change yet again. So there's always changes, and it's really hard now because there are so many people online like, "Oh, I can answer your questions about that because I did it myself 2 years ago." Like, "Oh, well, maybe you did, but like there have been 3 major changes to that procedure since then." So,
Mm.
unless you're doing it on an ongoing basis and understand how things work and understand how things work in like different departments.
Yeah, so you are helping a lot of different profile, a lot of different people. Like it could be like, as you mentioned, maybe students. It could be like a retiree. It could be families, business people. I think you have like a wide variety of people. And I wanted to ask you, as you mentioned to me, and I'm aware of it as well with my school, that there is currently a big wave of people, especially from the USA, coming to France. Without turning it into a political discussion, do you feel that the current climate in the US is influencing the people's desire to live or rethink their lifestyle? And yeah, are you like, can you tell us a word about this this big wave?
A couple of things. I mean, there's definitely been an increase in Americans wanting to move to France. It's been a little bit hard to tell. Like, obviously, my company has been growing significantly over the past 5 years since COVID, and it's hard to tell. Like, is the increase just because we're marketing better, or is there an overall increase or a trend towards Americans moving abroad? And I think it's a couple things, like, and not just political. I don't think that people who suddenly thought, the day after an election, like, oh, I'm going to move, I'm going to leave the US. I don't think those people tend to end up following through unless they already had an idea or a plan of, oh, I'd really like to live somewhere else.
And maybe it's good because
Yeah.
you need also the real desire, to move just to flee a country. It's quite different, no, than being really pulled by a culture or.
Yeah. And I mean, we work primarily with people who are relocating independently. So as you said, it's families, it's retirees, it's people who are starting a business. We're not typically working with clients who, are finding a job that's going to sponsor them to move to France because they already have like their HR consultants and immigration consultants that work for the company. But what I will say is I think there's a couple of things. One is obviously since the pandemic, there have been so many people who realize like, oh, this work that I'm doing, I could do it from anywhere. So there's really a big push towards people being able to work remotely, people thinking like, oh, I don't have to be sitting at a desk, in an office building in order to do my job. So why not try to do it from somewhere else? I think there's also, there's some serious cost of living issues that have exploded since COVID-19. And, unfortunately, not just in the US, but in France and all over the world as well, where, things have gotten a lot more expensive. People are feeling like they have to hustle, just to sort of make ends meet. And I think a lot of people in the US are just kind of over it. And, maybe in Europe, we have a better quality of life. We have a better social safety net, things like that, where
the rhythm of life, it might be a bit slower, more balance between
like
work and
and there's also the fact too that like, you don't have to make as much money in France as you do in the US. If you're starting a business in France, they want to see that you're making French minimum wage, which right now is 1,823 euros per month. So it's not like obviously it's helpful to have a little bit more than that. It's still hard to live on minimum wage in France. But, it's not like in the US where you see things like, oh, you're starting a business, like here's how to get to 10K months. Well, that's not easy. Most businesses, particularly women-owned businesses, do not make it to 10K months. And so like there's just so much pressure, economic pressure on people that I think, people will see moving to France or moving outside of the US as an opportunity to, be able to have a little bit of a better quality of life and not have so much of the economic stress. So I think there's a lot of things besides just politics and election results that are pushing people to move. And I think too, I mean, there's also just the emotional factor. Like, you know, the borders were closed for 453 days during COVID-19. They
Yes.
closed on March 13th, 2020. They opened back up on June 9th, 2021. And I had clients that I had started working with in January, February of 2020, where, you know, we were meeting every time the rules changed, we were having a meeting. And finally, when the borders opened back up and people were able to travel again, like there was just this giant feeling of relief. Like I didn't know that global travel could shut down. And I'm not going to, you know, waste any more time. I'm not going to delay my move any further. I mean, I was quite lucky in that time, in that people who had hired me to help them with their move, like most of them, we were just operating with the understanding that like when the borders open back up, the move will happen, and I will continue to support you during that process, like until you get here. You know, it's not like, oh, I'm going to cancel my 7-day trip to Paris and I don't know when I'm going to reschedule and please give me a refund. It was quite different from that. But I think people just kind of felt like, you know, I don't ever want to have that experience again of feeling like I can't go to a place, of feeling like, you know, I'm not going to be able to get to France if I want to go.
Especially with as you are part of the new world in the USA, and a lot of people have ancestors from Europe. I think it's like the dream to go back to explore, you know, the roots, the origin, where you are from. And a lot of people have that in their bucket list. Once in my life, I want to either travel to Europe or to live for a limited period of time, or actually, as you work with the kind of people who actually want to settle down forever.
Yeah. And unfortunately, France doesn't have like citizenship by descent in the same way that like Italy, or well, Italy used to up until very recently, or Ireland, or even Spain makes it quite easy for people with Latin American descent to get Spanish citizenship. And France is quite restricted compared to some of the other countries. But yeah, I mean, I think that there are a lot of people, we do have some clients where they have family ancestry in France that they want to learn about and explore and understand their history. We have some clients who are like descended from the Huguenots and
Wow. That must be amazing because of your background that you mentioned, you know, like the study that you did with the woman in Algeria. I think you like to listen to stories of people, and with every client comes a story, you know?
Yeah, and I think this goes back to what you said earlier too, that I really love to think about, like, you know, a lot of times people do have something that they want to get away from. You know, sometimes I know what that is. Like it's a loss, it's a divorce, it's, you know, I don't have family left. My kids are grown. I mean, there's a whole lot of things that people can sometimes flee is the right word, but a lot of times it's just, you know, get some space from, get some distance from. And I mean, that was certainly the case for me. There were things that I wanted to leave in the US, and, you know, coming to a new place where, you know, I didn't know anybody.
La page blanche, white canvas.
Exactly. Yeah, clean slate. There's certainly a lot of that, but I think it's important too of like, you know, having the next chapter of the story that you can write, like have something that you're moving towards, and not just, you know, oh, I'm leaving politics, I'm fleeing the country, and and sometimes people will say that to me jokingly and sometimes not, but I think it can be a factor in like, okay, now's the right time, but I think it's really important to have something that you're going towards or that you're going to be creating, whether it's this quality of life, whether it's, you know, a particular region that you want to discover, you know, even just the new challenges of like, you know, if I move to a new country in a new language, like I have to focus on learning French and, you know, making friends in a new culture and discovering this new environment and, you know, learning about all these cultural things and eating new food. Like there's a whole lot of challenges that you encounter when you're moving to France, and that can help you develop resilience in a different way.
Do you think people underestimate often, like the people who you work with, those challenges?
Sometimes they do. I think I try to talk about it a lot. You know, there is a lot to adjust to, and there, you know, you're not just on vacation during your time in France, because there are some people who come and they, you know, they make a big effort to join a local association, to take French classes, to spend a lot of time in their community, like exploring the different towns nearby and learning the history, and like who make a real effort to become part of their community. And then there's also people who come and they're like, okay, like France is a vacation and we're gonna travel to like different places in France or in Europe, but we're not necessarily committed to building a life and a community here where they are. And sometimes they stay like in the
The
Anglophone or the
bubble.
American bubble, and they're in like the expat groups, and they're not really practicing French. And I think you need a little bit of both. Like I won't say, don't travel, don't join the English speaking groups. I would never give that advice, but
It's good to have the
it
security, no? To have like the feel that you
yeah.
can share, that you are not completely isolated at first. But as you mentioned, it's good to keep alive this curiosity and this explorer mindset, no?
Well, and I think and you need to shift your mindset from like I'm an American in France to like I'm a person who lives in France who happens to be American. And that takes time for sure. You really have to shift it from like oh, everything about me and my admin and all of this stuff, like it's all in the US. I have my bank account in the US and I use my US credit card for everything. Like, no. You open a bank account in France, you use your French bank account for your French expenses. You have an electricity account in France, you have a long-term lease in your name. Things like that where sometimes people take some time to just be a part of the system and like accept that like this is the system that we're in now.
And it's good to have someone like you to help them not to feel overwhelmed by all of that, I think, because at first it's a lot of things to manage, and to be side by side with some students who spend like, I can see that the first year, it's a lot about surviving. It's a lot about dealing with everything they have to do. Maybe if they buy a flat, it's like the renovation, trying to speak with the people, to manage project, the renovation of the house, or dealing with the bank, or maybe potentially the loan. I think it's a lot of things to take the first year. So I think what you mentioned, it's interesting that it's good not to be completely disconnected from the expat, because the expats, you can exchange stories, you can feel supported, you feel people in the same situation as you, so there is a bit of empathy, you relate, but as well find a balance between not living exclusively in this expat bubble, but actually going out there, meeting people, like really trying hard to create bridges, and as you say, like live the life as a local.
Yeah, and I mean it's not easy for sure, and it's definitely important to have those resources. But I tell people, think about, okay, if you're moving to France at 50 years old, from birth to now, you've had, a bank account set up for you, and utilities, and you've gotten an apartment, and you've gotten a cable account, and you've gotten your cell phone, and like all of those things that you've done over the course of 50 years from birth up until now. You have to do basically all of that in less than a year to truly establish yourself in France. And like even leaving aside, like a lot of our clients, either they own a place already because they bought it as a secondary residence and now they're going to live there. Like most people are not buying property at the same time they're moving here. They either do it before or after. But even like leaving aside that, there's getting on the healthcare system, there's setting up a bank account, there's exchanging your driver's license, there's getting your pets registered, there's putting your kids into school and understanding how the cantine works. There's all kinds of things that you need to figure out.
The list is
and
long.
do for the first time in a totally new system that has nothing to do with how you would ever do things in the US or the UK or wherever. And it's in a different language that you may or may not speak very well.
And it's true that we mentioned the US because you are from such a big continent country. We could almost say that your country is a continent. And so often, for a lot of people that you may work with, often it might be the first big move, because for us Europeans, it's quite common to live abroad. We have Erasmus. We are kind of used to like have a little experience in another country because our countries are quite small. But I think for you, it's kind of, it's quite different. It's not the same.
Well, I mean, I think yes and no. It's true that we're not necessarily used to doing a big move abroad, and a lot of people don't study abroad like in Erasmus and things like that. But I mean, moving from Massachusetts to Los Angeles is basically the same distance as moving from Massachusetts to Paris. So I was interviewing clients for my podcast a couple weeks ago, and they're from Rhode Island, which is a tiny state right next to Massachusetts. And they were saying like, yeah, like none of our family lived near us. So they were all out on the West Coast and
Mm.
flying from France to, the West Coast, maybe it was like Seattle or something, but like flying France to Seattle is a couple extra hours compared to flying Boston to
Mm.
Seattle. So it's not that much farther. I think the main difference, though, obviously, is like if you move from Massachusetts to California, there's certainly a different culture in terms of like the people are very different in Massachusetts than in California, but the system more or less is
Yeah,
quite similar. Like it's the same language, we have the same cultural references, there are differences,
same
but
language.
yeah, it's the same system overall.
Mm.
And we kind of have a common understanding of how things work in both places. But moving from Massachusetts to France, where there's not even really comparing the healthcare system in the US and France. Like they're two
Oh
totally
yeah,
different animals.
yeah. I like it. Different animals. Something that struck my attention, something that I noticed in your page, I will put the link of your website, is that you are a relocation agency, but you also focus on the words that I saw on your website is on the emotional side of moving abroad. That's why I was also drawn to you. And also you speak about the resilience and cultural shock. And when you mentioned before, like the process when you help the clients, I was wondering, like when we spoke about escaping versus feeling the pull towards the country, is there a moment where when you start speaking with the client, where you have this little how do you say alarm? No, this little bell that says alert, alert. This person might not be ready for moving. Is there a moment like that where you think, okay, maybe this is not a good idea? Maybe this person fantasizes too much, or is there a moment where you actually have to intervene like that as a, because I know that your job is to be like, the practicalities, delivering like the steps, the bureaucracy, the paperwork, but I imagine that you also work with this other aspect. So I don't know if sometimes you had this situation.
Yeah, and I mean it's really delicate, right? Because I mean, I've talked about this a lot. I talk about it a little bit less in our marketing now, but really when I started my business, well, I mean the business kind of started 12-ish years ago. The company now started 5 years ago. But when I started, like the individual, like the B2C relocation industry, like didn't really wasn't very well developed. Like there were not really a lot of individuals or companies providing services to other independent people. It was mostly like corporate relocation agencies selling to companies that were moving their employees abroad. Like there was definitely that aspect of, wanting to get space and be in a different language and a different culture and having that, yeah, having that freedom to figure some things out and grieve and, deal with some stuff that I didn't feel like I was going to be able to do in the same way at home. A lot of times people, I'll talk to people and they'll tell me their stories about why they want to move and why now is the right time. And sometimes they'll share things and either we have a client who her brother was killed in combat in Afghanistan, and we have a client who had some legal issues, and after that was resolved, like really just kind of had this feeling of betrayal and disgust with how things happened, and wanted to kind of start fresh with a new business and a new place. And so sometimes like people will share those, and I'll just kind of I'll listen and try to understand like what is it that we're looking to create, and are we able to do that. And sometimes people will share things like oh, I was taking care of my elderly mother and who passed away like a couple months ago, and so now I'm ready to move. And sometimes I'll say, you know I'm here to help you, and I can certainly make that happen if that's what you want to do. And it's not my position to judge the decisions of other
Mm-hmm.
adults, but just make sure, like, for your own sake, that a lot of times when you're in the depths of grieving, it's not the best time to make a decision like that and to like sell everything and give up everything and make that move. And you're the only person who can know if it's the right decision and the right timing, and are you going to regret it. And maybe you will and maybe you won't, but it's still your decision to make.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes I ask myself that question, and sometimes I'll ask the client that question if I'm unsure of like
Yeah.
let's just, it can be helpful to have a new challenge and a fresh start and things like that in that situation. But it's also, it can be sometimes dangerous or unhealthy or, not ideal to be making the move like right after some type of major loss or grief or life change. So it really depends on like the person and the
Yeah.
situation. And, it's also important sometimes, like, is that person going to end up isolated and, have more difficulties because of the move?
Yeah, I like the fact that you come from a place of non-judgment and to actually ask the questions. Maybe it's the best way sometimes to just raise questions and people can just start to self-reflect more. I also like that you mentioned it depends if you are going alone, if you are going to be isolated, because I know the experience is completely different if you move as a single person, as a family, as a couple. Like, do you find that the experience end up to be completely different? Like for you, is it because I know that you've been following people with completely different stories and conditions. So do you think that the integration happens better as a solo person, as a couple? Like what's the feedback that you could observe?
I think it really depends. I think it depends on your personality. I think it depends on the place that you move to. If you do move as a couple, I think it depends a little bit on like your dynamic as a couple and whether or not, you have one person who's like really extroverted, who's going to go out and like make all the friends for you. That can be really helpful. And sometimes, if you are in a situation where, you were a little bit isolated where you were in your home country and maybe had some loss or some life challenges, and now you're moving to like Paris where you're going to be in a vibrant city and there's going to be like all of these opportunities for culture and activities and joining groups and having a vibrant social life that you didn't have where you were, then I think that can be really positive. And then we have some couples where, I'm thinking of one couple in particular, like, the wife is lovely, she's shy, she's a little bit shy and quiet and introverted and maybe wouldn't be going out and trying to make friends with French people. And the husband is like, he barely speaks French, but he will speak it with anybody. He made friends down at the bar the first week they were there, and then they have activities and invitations to apéro and all of these things without, and it's been really great for them. So it really depends, I think, on like what's your dynamic
And where you move to as well, because it's a big
and where you
difference.
move to. Yeah, and like if you move to, like the middle of nowhere in the Dordogne where you're, 30 minutes from your nearest grocery store and there are no English speakers around you and you don't really speak French, like if you really make an effort, you might pick up French very quickly if you go to all these activities, but it's going to require a lot of hard work on your part and you might feel quite isolated in the beginning and you might be a little bit depressed and unhappy and wonder whether or not you made the right decision.
So in terms of integration, as we are speaking about it, imagine I'm 50 years old or 50 plus, I'm American, I never lived abroad. What are the most important parts in terms of mindset to develop in order to integrate and to have a happy life abroad? Like for you, what's the most important aspect?
Sure. Well, I think one of the most important things is like, what does your ideal social life look like? Is it, are you somebody that really needs to have, people that you're talking to all the time? Like, are you going to need those English speaking group connections and, going out and doing activities with people in a language that you speak and, having those activities be in English? Are you okay with, kind of struggling a little bit, but doing some activities or groups in French and making a real effort to learn the language? Do you want to be in a place where there's a lot of culture and history or beach or mountains or like what is it that you like to do? And where are you going to be able to do that? I think those are all really important questions to consider, particularly if you're not working. I mean, we have some clients who are in their 50s who have saved up enough from their previous employment that they don't have to work, which is great. So then what are you going to do with your time? Are you going to volunteer? Are you going to, what is it that's going to make you happy and help you occupy your time? And where are you going to find that? And sometimes when I talk to people, like I can get a read on them, like, oh, I think you'll really like Bordeaux, or ooh, I think you do really well in Normandy.
Yeah, you do. Surely, with all this experience, you have this kind of algorithm. Like when you speak with a person, you're like, I can sense that. And actually, I saw that in your website, you have some quiz. For what are your quiz? I think I saw two quiz.
Yeah, we have two. One is like how ready are you to move, and it asks you through like, it talks you through like, have you decided where in France you want to live? Have you decided if you're going to work or not and what that's going to look like? Have you decided, what are your long-term goals? How, do you speak French? Like things like that. And then we have a visa quiz where people can answer questions about like, well, what's your work situation? What kind of financial situation do you have?
Yeah, in the end, it made me think when you spoke before, it's a lot of questions that you have to ask yourself before moving. So on the top of all the practicalities, the paperwork, all those questions are very important to think about before moving. In terms of the changes that happens towards the experience when people, I don't know if you stay in touch with the people you work with after a year or two when they are settling down in France. What do you think are the biggest changes? Like, are they like changing their rhythm of life, their relationship towards money, towards, the frugality, the consumption, or even yourself, because you are the American that moved to France years ago. So what kind of transformation can you observe?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on, again, like where people end up living and what they do for, like if they're doing any kind of work. I mean, we do have some clients who set up companies and they continue to work with people from the US, and so then they don't really ever lose the, the sort of hustle, get things done mindset of people who work in the US. And I kind of always tell clients, like particularly the ones who are starting businesses, like, you can take the American out of America, but you can't necessarily take the America out of the American. So, if you want to move to France for the quality of life and, the apéro and the long weekends and, doing the pont.
Faire le pont,
like,
ouais, we just had
yeah,
a long weekend
yeah,
recently.
yeah. So then you have to do that. Like you have to do it yourself, because it's not just by osmosis of living in France that you're naturally going to be relaxed on a Thursday afternoon when it's a holiday and you feel like you should be catching up on things and you're not. Like you have to actively work on that in yourself, particularly if you're working with, you're continuing to work with clients or businesses in America. And on the same token, like you need to get used to the fact that if you send somebody an email at 7 o'clock on Wednesday night before a Thursday, Friday, 4-day long weekend, you're not going to get an answer until Monday. That's just how it is. I do think that people learn how to chill out a little bit after around 2 to 3 years. I think the first year or two, they're still kind of like trying to get everything done. And like, and sometimes, you're not really sure if you're missing something and if you should follow up or if you shouldn't follow up. And is it late or is it not late? Or is this a big deal or not? Like, you don't really know. Do I need to call the prefecture and try to figure this out? Do I need to make an appointment with that company, or are they just going to get to it because there was another holiday? Like, you don't always know what the right rhythm for things are, and that it takes time to learn.
The time, les horaires of the restaurant or the shops, or getting used to the fact that sometimes they say it's open and it's closed, or things like that.
I spent quite a few Sundays my first year in Paris where I didn't have a whole lot of food in the apartment. And even then, I mean, most places now on Sunday are open like normal hours, but that is not the case when you leave Paris.
Yeah. So that's part of it as well. And I think I work a lot with 50 plus and retirees. And I think it's because they are facing a massive life change. They stop working, and usually Americans, as you mentioned, you have a strong work ethic, so you work a lot. And suddenly, like, there is this big emptiness, vacuity. And I think maybe they don't want to stay in this hyper productive country, and they actually want to move in order to channel a little bit with this kind of slow life in France or Italy. And I think that's a good match then for people, for retirees. I feel like often they really embrace the market, le marché, going from les petits commerçants to another, la fromagerie. And I think that's a real pleasure. And I think for this slow life, France is actually one of the top country, you know?
Yeah, and I think that there's a like even the smallest village will offer quite a bit in that, way. Like I was talking to this woman yesterday who I was at an activity for my son, and it was one of the other moms, and she was saying like she lives in a village of like 700 people, and they still have like all of these associations. Like there's so much for the kids and the families to do. Like one thing that I think is really great about France is that there are so many activities that are very low cost, like that it's just like groups of people getting together, and basically, you're paying a very small cover fee to cover like whatever the cost of the materials are, but there's no like in the US now we kind of have the idea that we need to capitalize and like make money on everything, like even the smallest hobby, and like any club that you're going to join is going to be expensive because like the cost to run the organization and the insurance and all of that, like everything's expensive, right? And here it's just like, this association, it's a speed cubing association, and like there's no fee to join. They just had to set up an association so they could borrow a room from the town every month. Our contribution is like we bring a bottle of soda and a snack item so the kids can have a snack at the end. And like there's no fee, like nobody's making any money off of it, nobody's getting paid, like we don't even have to pay to rent the room. And that's how most things are. Like it's,
It's
covering
very common.
the costs are low. And that enables people to do like a lot of different activities, and it enables a lot of different clubs and organizations to exist all over France for pretty much anything that you could want to do.
We have so many associations. We have even like les bars associatifs. And as you mentioned, sometimes like in order to participate to an event, sometimes it's like there is a beautiful concept, like everyone has to bring their soup and everyone shares soup. So in the winter, I know some places where they ask to bring a little bit of wood so we can put the fire, you need to use the fireplace. So, there is like a lot of, I think le tissu associatif en France, like it's very dense, and I think it's very part of the culture. And also we have the collaborative economy. I think it's not very present in the US, but like for instance, BlaBlaCar, the carpooling is very common. It's actually now with the price of fuel, it's even like bigger. But we have like home exchange, that's really big. I don't know if it's that big in the USA, but I've been enjoying it a lot myself to travel in France. And it's very much, it's based on trust on the other person, and it's like also to leave the monetization. It's not all about the money, as you mentioned. It's an exchange, trust-based experience, and an exchange. And we have also an association. It's called, I don't know if you heard of CEL, Service d'Échange Local, where people tell what can they bring. Like for instance, I can babysit your kid, I can teach French, or I teach mathematics, and people exchange one service against another, and there is no money involved. Yeah. So I think those kind of things are very, very, I don't know if it's French or European, but
yeah, and it's probably more common in like the smaller villages where people know each other. I mean, even in my town, like, there's a lot of people coming and going every year, so it's not quite as, you're not necessarily as well connected to everyone in this kind of town as you might be to other people in a neighborhood or a village where, everybody's kind of been there a long time and known each other. But yeah, it's definitely, there's so much more of that in France than in the US. And even to the point where like in France, like kids still take the bus to school alone, like walk to school in certain places. Like it's not, they have a lot of freedom that like kids in the US don't even have anymore.
Your husband is French?
Yes.
And for you, it was obvious that you would stay in France and raise your kids in France? Like there was...
Yeah, I mean, I was always open to staying in France. I kind of, I always wanted to give myself that option. What ended up happening, but I do kind of tell him like I came to France for France first, and then like
So you
Yeah,
meet
like
him
I didn't
here.
come
So
to France
yeah,
for the man. Like
yeah,
he just
yeah,
happened
yeah,
to be here.
yeah. So that's good. And what part of you have changed the most? Like what part of Allison has been franchised? Like is there something that definitely have changed? Like we spoke about the rhythm. I know that you are an entrepreneur. You have this company. I don't know if like there is like you work with a lot of American, I imagine. After years in the country, and having kids as well, and a French husband, and having kids in France, what's the transformation within you? I think it's a bit hard to answer, but
I don't know. It's just you kind of get to this point, like, and I'm not certainly not the first person to say this, but I just kind of got to a point where like whenever I go back to the US, I'm kind of like I'm too French for this, and whenever I come back, but then when I come back to France, I'm like I'm a little bit too American for this. You know, like going back to the US and like thinking, okay, well, how am I going to get around? Like when I'm at my parents' house, they have a car that I can use, but it's like if there's no, you know, there's no public transportation or like I took the Amtrak train from Boston to New York, and you know, you have this whole car with probably at least 60 seats, maybe even 80, probably 80 seats, and you have like this little tiny luggage rack that's like not even 1 meter wide at one end of the train, and I'm like, how do people take the train with their luggage if for 80 people you have room for like maybe 8 suitcases? Like, I don't I don't understand how that works. And like not even like 8 of the big suitcases, like 8 mini suitcases. So it's just kind of things like that. And you know, there's always the funny one too of like when I go back to the US and I always make a mistake and order a large coffee and then it's like, you know, giant.
yeah, the size.
But that always takes a little bit of time to get used
Yeah,
to.
yeah.
It's true that going back to the US sometimes like it's true what they say of like things just kind of work in the US. Like you make an appointment at the DMV and you do have to go and wait a while, but like you go up with all your documents and then you walk out with whatever thing you went in there for. Whereas in France, it's like, yeah, you make an appointment and then you go and then they don't have your appointment or you have to get a ticket and you still have to wait all day and then you get to the desk and like you're missing 2 documents that weren't on the list and they send you back and now you have to make another appointment. Or, you know, we have somebody where
La paperasse.
Yeah, well, not even just like la paperasse, but also like the idea that their goal is not to fix your problem, like do the thing that you came here to do. Their goal is to like check all the boxes on their list, and actually it's better for them if they say, oh no, you don't have everything, come back another time, like come be somebody else's problem later.
Yeah, I think it's because also we are very formal, like there is this you know, and you can also feel it in the language. The French language is still quite formal, like, you know, just writing an email. I feel like sometimes we have like forms, like sentences from the Middle Age. It's like very heavy formal sentences, and I think the country is still attached to all those formalities.
Yeah. And I do get now like a weird feeling if I go to something in the US or with other Americans and all of a sudden I'm like on a first name basis I went to an event a couple years ago where there was one of the the minister counselor of consular affairs for the US embassy, and she's like, you know, speaking and doing this event for Americans, and I ended up in a conversation with her afterwards, and like we just met. She's like, this is probably the 5th most important American in France, right? And like all of a sudden we're on a first name basis, and that to me just like feels totally bizarre as somebody who's been in France for so long, where, you know, I know people professionally and personally that I still vouvoie, or like I get yeah, or like I another thing that like kind of still makes me uncomfortable is like I don't always know when to go to tu, or we'll switch to tu with someone, but then I won't see them for like 3 months, and then I have to remember like, oh, am I vouvoying this person or tutoying them? Like, what did we decide? Like having to remember.
Yeah. Sometimes it happens as well for me as a French person. Sometimes I'm a bit indecisive and I'm kind of switch. Yeah. I don't know, for some reason when I speak with a man with a moustache, and if the person asks me, can we on peut se tutoyer, and I say yes, and then I keep on using vous because for me it's like authority, the moustache. I don't know. There is some strangeness like that about tutoyer or vouvoyer. But sorry, we've been speaking a lot and it's very interesting, but I know that the time is flying, and I just want to conclude on, because we spoke about as well within you the differences between, you know, like the part of you that's American and the one that's French. And I wanted to link it towards language, because obviously like you are like fully integrated, you speak also thanks to your studies, meeting your husband, and like coming so young, your French is really good. And also, do you think mostly first in French rather than thinking in English? And do you think for the people you work with that the question of the language is a little bit underestimated, that people don't put enough focus on it? Like, what's your thought on the topic?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it really depends like who I'm talking to and what the subject is, whether I'm thinking in French or English. Like I speak English with my son exclusively, but I speak French with my husband. So like I'm very often like switching back and forth from one to the other, and sometimes and most of the Americans that I work with like on my team or in activities that I do, if I'm with other Americans, they've all been here a really long time, and so we kind of have like a little bit of a franglais, like hybrid between French and English, where like, you know, if I think of an expression in French, but I'm speaking English, I'll still like say the thing in French and people will understand. So it's funny too, like you get a little bit of a hybrid
Language, because
language.
some words are, you know, you can't translate them and they're better in this language, so you use them, and it's like
Yeah, exactly. And so and I tell people too, like, you know, every time, like I've been here in France for a long time, I came with a very good level of French, but there's still like every time I do a new activity, like I still have to learn vocabulary. And, you know, I don't think there's ever going to be a point where I'll feel like I have exhausted all opportunities for learning French. You know, like my son started ice hockey this year, and so now I had to learn all of that vocabulary. And, you know, next year when he's in middle school, like it will be a whole other
yeah.
vocabulary. And like don't even get me started on all of this teenage slang that
Yes.
idea.
Le verlan, or even in text message, they just drop all the vowel, they just use those consonants. Yeah, it's just
Yeah, like we saw a play a couple weeks ago that was like, it's called Adolescent, and it was about like, and it was like a teenage girl who goes to visit her grandfather in the countryside or whatever, and like I could maybe understand half of what she was saying because of all of the slang. And I mean, it was
chiant,
like,
it's a bad word, just for people to know. It's like un gros mot. It's
I did not know
yeah.
that until it was too late.
Ah. So that's good to know those things.
So that is an important one to know.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I mean, I think the other thing too, like in terms of underestimating the language, there's like, you know, obviously they're studying and progressing like A2, B1, and developing your language skills. But there's also like, there's certainly a gap between, you know, feeling confident, you know, putting together some phrases in French and then actually being in the middle of a group of French people having a conversation all in French, and like all of the little small talk vocabulary and, you know, like confirmation and protest phrases that like you don't even realize that you need to know until, you know, you're trying to participate in a group conversation at a party or something.
Could you give away some of those French expressions that you think? I always ask the people I interview to give like sentences that are very important for them. So is there any that comes to your mind that you learned, and they are maybe very easy, hein, but quite useful?
Yeah, effectivement, oui, mais en fait, just like the little punctuation phrases that.
Ah oui, c'est ça.
Ouais, c'est ça. Oui, je vois ce que tu veux dire, mais en fait, moi j'ai vu que. Voilà.
Yeah, it's hard to pinpoint. It's really according to the context.
Yeah. And I found that was something that I found quite difficult. Like when I started, you know, going to like dinner parties with French people and like finding the right ways to interject my thoughts into like even if I could express like whatever it was that I wanted to say and I understood what was going on, like, you know, just kind of finding ways to interject into the conversation and participate. Like learning those little phrases and learning how like the rhythm of a conversation is different in France, with like people cutting each other off and talking at the same time, and like
so
you know,
French.
and also like getting into these like really passionate political debates, and then like, okay, it's time for the cheese course. Like, and you know,
Yeah.
like nobody's like breaking up with anybody over it.
No, we are not offended. Yeah, and I think that's because I feel that maybe in the USA, like you tend to be not more people pleaser, but it's like more like c'est lisse. One thing that I don't know how to translate, c'est plus lisse the conversation. I think in French, I think because of our political culture, we are used to debate, shout, as you mentioned, couper la parole, cut each other when we speak. And this is something in terms of cultural shock, that's quite important as well to take in consideration, no?
Yeah, and it's definitely people aren't afraid to like offend each other or have a different opinion from each other. Like,
Yeah.
there's very much a culture of we can disagree very passionately on a particular topic and like we can still be friends and have like a different conversation, you know, 10 minutes later and it's fine. Which I think in the US is really complicated right now.
Yes.
Even for people who have like 95% the same political views, like that 5% can cause problems sometimes. So it really, it's something to get used to. And like, yeah, don't feel like if you have a debate or an argument with a French person that's going to ruin your friendship forever. And
that's
on
so
the
good.
contrary, it's a really good sign if you start having those conversations and those debates. And
it shows intimacy, confidence, trust between the person as well. I usually ask as the last question, if there are people watching us, listening to us, and they're a little bit on the fence, they are like kind of getting ready, watching all those YouTube videos, the podcast, making all the researches possible, but they still hesitate about moving. They are not quite, they are a little bit unsure. I know like it all depends on everyone's situation, but do you have one piece of advice to give to the people watching us?
So I would say that in most cases, if you want to move to France, whether you're planning on trying it out or whether you're not sure if it's long-term for you, you want to start as though you're going to stay forever, but you can always change your mind and go back home. You know, it's really important that if you're going to move and you do want to stay long-term, that you get a lot of stuff right from the beginning, whether it's the visa type and getting on the French healthcare system as soon as possible and opening up a French bank account and getting bills in your name. Like there's a lot to do that you need to plan in advance and you need to do it the right way. If you do, you're set up to continue to stay and renew your visa, and you know, there's in most cases there's no reason why you couldn't potentially stay indefinitely. You can always change your mind and go home. Then I think you just need to think through, like, what am I giving up if I leave? Am I selling all my belongings and my house? Am I leaving some kind of door open in case I want to come back? And will I be able to afford to come back if I choose to do that? And then what am I gaining from having this experience, even if it only ends up being a couple years? And you know, you need to think too that even if you plan to stay forever and you change your mind and you go home at some point, that doesn't mean it's a failure. And you don't have to feel bad about changing your mind and going back. We have some clients that have moved back, some because of family situations, some because like of work opportunities. You know, it's good to plan long term, but also like it's not like you're not locking yourself into a decision for life. You can always make different choices. You can move to Paris first and then decide you'd rather be in Nice. You can move to start a business and then decide like, actually, no, I just want to be retired. There's very little that's set in stone, but there are a lot of important steps to get right to make sure that you keep those choices available to you.
Super, merci beaucoup, Allison. And I will leave the link towards your website, the podcast, your socials, because as you mentioned, you were a blogger before, and I think your passion is also to help people. So I think you do it through the podcast and through the events that you also create. So I'm going to leave all the links below the video, and you can stay in touch with Allison. Merci beaucoup.
Merci à toi.
À bientôt. Au revoir.
Au revoir.